Why is it sometimes more important to capture chemistry than detail? How can one curate a space in which an artist feels safe? Why is 3 the magic number for collaboration? This cosmic transmission comes from Alex Di Camillo, a sonic shaman from Waterford, Ireland. Alex has worked on projects for such artists as Stormzy, Tom Odell, James Bay, Young Thug, Tom Walker, and G-Eazy. Here, he discusses his work as recording engineer and studio manager at Camden Recording Studios.
I think my earliest music memory is a fake memory. There's a VHS of me playing a ukulele at 4, but my whole family is really musical. Like, my brother is an organ player and a keys player.
Wow.
My sister is training classical piano, did it for like 16 years, and then just cold turkey quit, which is crazy, but like it was just always music in the house.
Does it go back far into the family or?
No, it kind of started with my siblings.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and then like before that, like music is always a huge part. Like, always had record players, and my parents always have music in the house, but nobody plays.
So there's a big appreciation of music.
Yeah, massive. So
Okay, interesting.
yeah, especially like I was really good in school, and when I kind of went down this path, there was no like second guessing. It wasn't kind of like, oh, why don't you do like biochem or
Right.
something that will give you a steady stream of income.
Yeah.
Which was quite nice just to have that undying support.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's so necessary when you're, graduating from just an appreciation into like a career.
Yeah.
But do you play instruments yourself?
I used to.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like in the last decade I haven't been playing. Like I'll play to myself and for myself, are just enough to like co-write a track. But I do not want to be on a stage. I don't want that sort of attention. And like even the fact, an interview talking about me feels really uncomfortable because I spent so much time talking about other people and how they're feeling and how to actualize their projects and visions. So for me to have to introvertly do that about myself feels like I'm talking a lot of shit.
Sure, but I think that's why it's so interesting to talk to people in roles like yours, because you're a real driving force behind anything creative. You're physically putting things together, and we talked a little about this beforehand. But the idea that you're serving another artist a lot of the time, or someone else's vision, I would say.
Yeah.
But do you think you knew that at the beginning? Like, was it a conscious choice to say, okay, I want to do music, and this is the nature of my personality, so I want to seek a role like a sound engineer, mixer, rather than performer?
I think it's like bigger than that, because I started making tea in a studio when I was 14, and like throughout all of school I would go. Ashley used to have a studio, Ashley Sheen, like little studio in Waterford. But it was like a beautiful studio. It was like top desk, John Lake speakers, and a nice mic selection. So it was like a really nice place to learn.
Yeah.
And like between the ages of 14 to 19, I would have been there like most days.
Wow.
And then early demos of my bands, like partially done there, and then within stuff that we bought ourselves. But it's like being around it, not being able to use it necessarily, but just the approach, I guess, of how you bring a project to life and creating a safe space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the driving force behind going to the studio at that age? Like, what made you make that decision?
He used to teach me guitar, and we used to have guitar lessons in the studio, and I was just more fascinated by like the buttons on a console than I was about my playing.
Right. Interesting.
So guitar lessons turned more and more into like, oh, what does this do? And then I'd record my own demos with him after learning a song, and I just developed out of that quite organically. And like simultaneously, like my uncle is a huge hi-fi fanatic. He has like 20 odd tape machines at home. And an insane collection of record players and 80s hi-fi. So he would just buy me like that tape deck there.
Yeah.
He bought me when I was 15, and so I'm not saying what I was making was good, but I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't recording music. It feels like a core part of my identity.
Yeah. What do you think it is about music that draws you in so much? I mean, I'd say it's changed over the course of your life, but
I think I don't know if it's changed over the years, because I wouldn't have thought about it before, if that kind of makes sense. I guess why I want to make records over doing live sound is you're capturing that thing that is timeless if you do it right. It's like the piece in history. Like whether it's good, whether it's bad, it's kind of like a timestamp. It's like releasing a book. It's this artifact that exists. I find that really beautiful. The responsibility of doing that correctly for another artist feels like a fun challenge. And like every decade has its own style, and music is so highly influenced by everything else that's happening in the world all the time. That's why we change, why visuals change to music and vice versa. So it's like something you do today in retrospect, regardless of whether it's successful or not. 20, 30 years from now, you can look back at it and it was like part of this Dublin scene. And that's thriving. Like you can go out to Whelan's any night of the week and there's just an infinite amount of like post-punk bands that are on the rise again. That wasn't the case 5 years ago.
What do you think it is that's encouraging that?
I don't know, and I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't get it out enough.
Okay.
It's kind of like catching the end of gigs each time and not questioning it. But I guess, I don't know. Like bullshitly, I'd probably say, off the back of Fontaines.
Definitely, yeah.
And CMAT, there's just this like, two of the biggest artists in the UK and Ireland right now. Fontaines internationally.
Sure. And it's like once, a few people from a certain area, certain country start going international, I suppose there's more eyes on that place and then more music gets found and a scene emerges. I suppose there's also that kind of element of a national pride type thing coming into it.
I was literally thinking that. There's more of that now. I think there's more people staying home rather than like circling back home.
Right. Yeah, I think, just to go back to the archival thing, I suppose maybe it would be helpful just before we go any further for you to explain what your job is.
My job changes on project to project.
Right.
I feel like I don't have a fixed job that I do. There's like the real basic side of it. Just like I'm a recording engineer. So kind of have 10 years experience doing it professionally and 16 out of a hobby.
Wow.
So it's just like, I'm pretty confident I can walk into any room and work, so that's like the core principle of what I do, whether it's me co-producing or me engineering, or it's learning your role within that room based on the energies that are in it. And I think it's a really subtle thing to learn, like knowing when to pipe up with an opinion because you're going to fuck with somebody's head, or knowing when it's benefiting a project. So it's about being able to read people. I think you can only get that when you meet people before and in a social context, or like in pre-prod. Don't make it about going and recording the demo. Kind of make it more about, how me and you just had a chat for 20 minutes outside about nothing. But it just puts people at ease and you get to suss out their personality.
Yeah, I suppose it's like any form of collaboration, like, like you were saying, whether you're working with artists or producers, it's, a focus on the process in that moment and how people are interacting as opposed to, just focusing on an end product. And I think that usually helps, indirectly.
I think being in it for like the long game.
Right.
Because I think early going into it, I started off as an assistant mix engineer when I started doing this full time. And it was like with a guy called Rory Cushionan, who's still like a really close friend. And Rory now runs Rhubarb Music and his own mixing company from here as well. And there was just the first 3 years, I kind of thought I wanted to go into production, and I still do, but I got sidetracked. It was such a rare experience to get into a room with somebody who had, written and mixed some of George Michael, and he'd done Ed Sheeran at the time. And, oh my God, I'm completely blanking. English folk group, Babel.
Oh yeah,
Mumford & Sons. Yeah. So he just moved to Dublin when I was like in second year college, and he was looking for an assistant, and I somehow got in the room. It kind of put all my other plans on hold. But then off the back of that, I kind of wanted to like be a better engineer. So I went to London and was like a junior assistant at Moloko and kind of worked my way up to being a junior engineer.
Amazing.
But it was like the vast variety of acts you kind of be working with. There was like 14 rooms I was working out of, and each day with a different team of people.
Wow.
So you kind of either like rise up to that challenge or fizzled out. So then coming back to Dublin after COVID, it just kind of felt like the right move. Like Cian, who owns Camden, was looking for a manager. My old friend, Jock Power, used to be a manager. So it was just like slotted right back in. And I've been here for the last 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your title here would be studio manager.
It kind of, I do the role of a studio manager and I'm referred to as the studio manager. It's still kind of a gray area. You know, to me, it's Cian's baby. So it's Cian's vision that I'm actualizing.
Right.
So it's slightly different. I think as a studio manager, like you'd have those meetings, but you'd be given free reign over a space. Whereas that step isn't necessarily there. You're still, in the same way I would approach an artist with their vision of a project, I do the exact same thing with the studio. You know, but that is more like internal management, you know, hiring assistants, hiring interns, and then overseeing tech specs, kind of bands or ideas and stuff like that. It all kind of goes through me, which you can imagine when you're kind of busy engineering 6 days a week on top of it, you're never off.
Sure.
You know, but there's something really special about the place because you kind of have the guys from Melty Brains next door. Then Rory is the room beside it. Me and Ben sharing this room. And then August, who's another good friend and engineer who works from Wednesdays. So there's always this kind of mixture of ideas and struggles as well.
Yeah. But it's great. It sounds like this space is almost like a scene within itself.
Yeah.
That's just, you know, great for collaboration across the board. But you mentioned briefly just there about working with artists. And so maybe talk a little bit more about that, just, you know, the process that you go through. I'm sure it's different with each artist, but when somebody comes in, you know, how do you go from approaching their vision and then, you know, moving forward to a final piece?
It really depends. And it's actually changed. Let's say with projects I've done entirely on my own, they've all been radically different. And it's kind of comes down to how I know the person. You know, I think the first project I've taken on was like Tamsin Dublin sessions.
Okay.
That was a fun one, but me and Tamsin met at a gig. I think it was a Tim Gallagher gig. She was supporting and I'd assisted with Rory on Tim's album. And just got talking, invited her back to Dublin. And we were just going to write. So the intention was to write for 2 days, see what came of it. But I just really liked her, love her energy. But there was like, they were demos, but there was something special about them. And we ended up releasing that as an EP. And what was interesting at the time, I think she was just coming out of her deal with EMI. And she'd kind of been shelved in that middle ground. So what I loved about that experience was to give her a platform to figure out what she wanted to be now that she wasn't being represented by a label anymore. And then for me, it was kind of the freedom. I hadn't written a song in 4 years, you know, so it was really great to tap back in that side of myself. Also seeing if I could do it in a situation that had no expectation. And then off the back of that, I've worked with her again, just as a mixer.
Yeah. I really resonate with that sort of desire to offer a space to artists to sort of think about who they are outside of anything commercial. Obviously, it's why I'm, you know, doing these conversations. But I think, you know, when you're offered that space, it's a chance to sort of analyze it for yourself and then taking it into your own hands. I think that's just the fun thing is like anything creative. It's like, okay, well, I'll do this, or like, you know.
100%.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you know, I have so much left to learn, but I've also been through a lot of different scenarios in the last while. I think sometimes it's like being in a studio can be a scary thing. Just because there's always like budgets around it, like how are you going to finance it? So it's like, what are the benefits of involving someone like me in a project? I think it is that. I think it's like creating a safe space, but also being able to capture things to like the best of your ability in that space and having some control, but it being something that's seamless and happens in the background, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's what I enjoy most about it.
Yeah, that's lovely. I think it's sort of like kind of trying to capture magic or something in terms of the, you know, you have to sort of sit back and not interfere with it, but then in order to capture it, you sort of have to at some point try and guide it and control it and be like, you know, say this into that mic or whatever. It's
or it's even just like, I mean, it's also personal. Like if I think about like Stella Hennessy, who goes like Stella and the Dreaming. I remember seeing Stella supporting Lemoncello. It was like 3 years ago. And it was just this solo set piano, her vocal, and she was like super shy, nervous, but I just remember thinking that she was amazing. I could just totally see her being an insane artist. And off the back of that, I kind of pushed her to work with me.
Great.
But, she was really hesitant at the start. And then like a year after, she needed some mixes. We got in touch, did one track. And then off the back of that, we did 3.
Wow.
And now I'm just kind of mixing her live stuff, and
It's great.
next EP. But like, there's something, and I can just see her grow. I think Stella is incredible. And I think she has so much more to go. And kind of being part of that journey feels really special.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of seeing her in that 50 cap venue as a support act to hopefully growing with her.
Yeah.
That's really exciting to me.
Yeah. It is really exciting. I mean, it's super special to be able to see the evolution of somebody like that who's really, in terms of art, putting themselves out there, and then to watch more and more people resonate with, who that person to be. It's really special.
Yeah.
But then, so just go back to working with artists, and on that point, is there things that you've noticed, more things that really help get the best out of an artist when you're working with them? Like what are those key tricks or those tactics?
I think it's not feeling pressure.
Okay.
Like even there's like 2 different examples. So like the Cruel Sister EP, Fate did a lot of that on her own. There's like so much of the early demos that we kept.
Okay.
But then there was like, the pressure of, she's self-funded. So when you're going to the studio, there's this pressure of like having to capture something right, not having a second chance to go in. And it's a really bad headspace to be in when you're in a studio, because you kind of want the freedom to like do the drums as many times as you need to kind of be like, oh yeah, I love that take. And I think I gave a lot of my own time on that project, like outside of the studio, to kind of make sure that when we did go in, that pre-production was done. But it's up to like, others like me. We're not getting paid to do that, so you're kind of doing it as like, because you're passionate and, really believe in her too. I think she's insane. I don't know if you caught her on the last tour.
No.
Again, so excited to see the next step of her career.
Yeah.
I think I have a stream of income from, working at the studio and projects I get hired in to do more as a hired gun, like all the post stuff that I'm doing.
Right.
And then one that I'm very passionate about is like, Rory gets me to engineer for projects he's producing, but it's a very different role because he's a killer producer and I'm just there to, the pressure's on to make things sound good. But it's more a day, right? It's not the thing that you're seeing from start to finish.
Right.
You might be working 4 days of a 9-day project because that's when you need it. So anything I take on my own, I need to take it on because I really believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes complete sense. I mean, it's probably, what's going to get the best out of the project anyway is, every party believing it and feeling passionate about it.
Yeah.
You said something just there, in passing, just about the pressures on, when you're trying to make something sound good. And because I have that written down here as a question, sort of an abstract, no answer type question, which is, in your line of business and like through your perspective, what, is that element that you would define as something that sounds good? I know it's an impossible question, but I just, often find that when I'm listening to stuff, I do distinguish between things that sound good and things that don't. I mean, it's different on each thing I listen to, but there is something inside my head that's clicking to something of that standard.
Yeah, it's so subjective, but it's also knowing you can go so many ways. So it's about having that conversation of what you want to get out of this record. What are your references? What are your goalposts? What's the aesthetic? And then each era has its own techniques.
Okay.
So you kind of start implementing those techniques into what you're doing, hiring in instruments that are, if you're trying to get like a Motown sound, well, you should be getting the 60s Ludwig, and you'll get there a lot like faster. So it's just like little things like that, I think make a huge difference.
So it's sort of like maybe beginning with, instruments and tangible things can really help ground emotional or sort of abstract artistic ideas in reality.
100%.
Okay.
And then on top of that, there's like, there's the basics of how you use phase in the recording. Like it's good to be in phase, but you can also be creatively out of phase.
Okay.
So
What is phase? What
phase? It's the relationship between two different audio signals.
Okay.
Hitting a source at a different time.
Okay.
So it affects the low end. So if you hear a phaser pedal, it's essentially shifting the waveform.
Okay.
So you hear that whoa, 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 right? Which is what a phaser kind of does. I kind of did that very poorly.
No, I'm with you.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you have one source and you're trying to mic it and your mics are out of phase, you're cutting out low end and you're adding that weird synthetic shift to your tops. So the relationship and how you move your mics into place, it will sound fatter and you're getting what you want from those two sources, or you can creatively thin it out and make a phaser just by using space.
Interesting.
But it's something I would do very, very hesitantly.
Interesting. Yeah. Do you think when you listen to stuff, like when you're listening to music, is it are you having like a double experience where you're like enjoying it, but also listening to the technical aspects of it?
I think of music a lot in terms of how it makes me feel.
Okay.
It's the same way in terms of performance, how to know when you have the right one, or how I would comp. It's ultimately a feeling that you're trying to recreate and chase. And, the sonic aspect of it, absolutely. But if something doesn't make you feel good or bad, you're going to not come back to it.
Right. Right.
I don't know about you, but definitely me, like, if I'm not either like transported or made feel emotional or kind of my problems taken away for that split second that I listen to something. So that's what you're chasing all the time.
Yeah. Interesting. And so in the process of, because you're, and others that you're working with are responsible for the creation of the song and you're seeing it grow bit by bit, is there a point at which that kind of feeling kicks in and it transforms? Or maybe a better question would be like, is there a formal technical thing that you're doing that you've noticed commonly helps you get there quicker, where you go from sort of just making it to feeling it, essentially?
I think the second you change a dynamic in a room, it's a different approach. So I think everybody goes through the same struggles, or sometimes a song will come in 5 minutes and you just nail it. There are times where you're like 6 months trying to work on something and figuring out why it's not quite sitting right, but this song is good. There's definitely like been doing stuff with this guy Obru, and I cannot wait for this project to be out because it's probably the thing I'm most proud of.
Wow.
That I've ever contributed to and done.
Wow.
Because it's more a little bit of co-writing and co-production and engineering.
It's great.
But it's 2 years in the making.
Wow.
Wow. So we've really taken our sweet ass time.
Do you think that's to its benefit, or do you think that's just been something that it had to take?
Yeah, I'll show you one of the tracks when we wrap up.
Yeah, I love that. But yeah, again, it's such an interesting job, just that tension between going from the really technical side of things to this side where you're really working with people and it's a labor of love, and like you say, it can be over the course of years. But it sounds like you really enjoy both the hired gun aspect of it and also the more drawn out, longer side to it. Would that be?
I love that. Yeah. I think ultimately what you can bring to both projects is you try and make sure that people leave the room better than they came. Like feeling better. Whether you've kind of actualized your project and did your best and they feel good about leaving that room. But I think I always do that in terms of, because even when we don't get it there and then, I'll put in my own time. Just because I hate letting something go if I think I could have done better. But then there's like recurring things that you would do that are very technical. Like, there's the systematic approach that I would have on every project, but that I would do on my own, which is kind of like, when I'm editing, and by editing, I don't necessarily mean like shifting things into time, but it's like going through it and being like, what dead hits are there, what doesn't need to be there, cleaning up audio. Like just taking the time to spend a day going through a track and making sure it's as good as it feels. Because often I think it's not necessarily the mix or how the final thing is presented that will stop it from feeling finished or not. It's, you know, not cleaning a lip smack or things that actively make it feel like a demo or less professional. So, you know, but they're things that you just do, or at this stage, I would just instinctively do. Sometimes I'm doing them on the go while I'm tracking, you know.
Yeah. What are some of those things that make it, like, that's a good example of lip smacks that I wouldn't have thought of myself, but like, what's other examples of things that like take something from a demo into a professionally sounding song?
Depends on, again, case by case. In a drum kit, it's, you know, sometimes on toms you kind of catch this like spill that can be really useful or is like just detrimental. So like, you know, cut out any audio that isn't tom sound on those mics.
Okay.
Or going through snare tracks if there's a lot of bleed, either splitting the individual hit and creating a clean snare track and a spill track. And sometimes if I'm working like that, it just allows me to turn the spill down like a couple of dB, but it just means I have that little bit more definition and space.
Right.
You know, but that's something you can't just automatically do that. You kind of, if it needs it, you do it. If it doesn't, you don't. You know, there are calls that you just learn to make over time.
Really reminds me of like, I'm sure there's a definite reason why I'm connecting these, but like when I used to take a lot of photographs and edit photographs, it seems like the exact same process where it's like you're looking at a photograph and you're not just saying, well, a professional photograph has this filter, I'm just going to smack that onto it. You have
That's
to,
the last thing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's, and if anything, that reverses, like, you know, you're going the opposite direction. But just those things of like, you're almost playing with it, like you're, you know, to get something out of it, like where it's like contrast, exposure, you know, and constantly returning to the thing to check how what you're doing is like how it's affecting the piece, and like I think this, you know, you said it best, like how it makes you feel. It's the same thing with a photo. I'm just relating this because it's like my version of understanding it, where it's like,
but they're so interlinked. That's the same thing.
Yeah,
you know, I think you can put art under the same umbrella always.
Yeah.
Because we're serving the same purpose.
Yeah.
like different mediums.
Yeah. I think that's something as well that even through doing these conversations as well, it's something I've like has just been reinforced even further into. I think I knew it already, but it's like so interesting to go from somebody who makes their own jewelry to somebody who makes music to somebody who's mixing music or whatever, and like these conversations always being like the same. Not to like, you know, I'm not saying that every episode is the same, person's the same, but we're talking about the exact same concepts. Like you say, we're serving the same master. Like a lot of the time, it's so interesting. Where I think it depends on, like, not to sound pretentious, but like true artistry, like when you're talking to somebody and the conversation evolves into into like an abstraction, like you're talking about like concepts, and let alone like I'm having a conversation with like somebody who would mix music or like make their own jewelry, but like we're talking about trying to be true in your work, or like trying to, you know, achieve this feeling or whatever, instead of like, you know, well, for like these are the exact steps I take, or like the technical things that like the differences between the two mediums. It always like you arrive, I feel like, when you're talking to somebody who's thinking like an artist, or you know, like having that way of being in the world, like it becomes clear how like everything is connected in that way.
1,000,000%. I think the real skill, which I'm still developing, but it's how you can do that and do all the technical aspects seamlessly in the background and let those things move along simultaneously. I think, you know, without making a deal of it, without making somebody feel like they've underperformed, like an artist doesn't need to know that you've tuned part of the vocal if you do it naturally.
Right.
You know, in my opinion. That sometimes it'll be just a few things. It's like a killer performance, and it's just this subtle little shift that makes it feel better. But it doesn't sound auto-tuned. You know, you've just gone into graphic mode and drew in a few extra lines. I'll do it quite subtly. But it's the difference between someone being really happy about how they sound back and then being like, oh, could we do this better? And it's knowing when to push and when not to push.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, because I think, you know, that's having a sense of perspective and being able to step back and be like, what actually is the goal here?
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think, you know, I personally can get caught up a lot in details and, you know, go off on this path where you know, my goal is actually, I've forgotten about my goal, you know, my true goal, and I'm just trying to like fix this one particular problem that's come up in front of me, but that problem actually has nothing to do with what I'm, you know, aiming for overall. It's just something I've gotten, you know, distracted by.
Completely, you know, and then it's so like specific to what you're doing again. Because at the same time, if you're doing, I've done a lot with like John Dunnigan and Brennan O'Neill, who are like jazzers, like, you know, it's such a killer. It's like John Daly on drums and Bernard on bass, and then Richie. Why can't I think of Richie's surname? Richie Buckley.
Okay.
Richie was like Van's sax player for the last 40 years. Wow. But it's just like, it's these dudes between the age of 60 and 70, you know, and they've been playing music their whole life. And the quartet we did this year, you want that to be as organic as possible, like no editing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but I know the approach they want is a purist approach, and I know that that's what they want to capture in that moment. So you can't do it in that context.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of, you learn that cop on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and then the difference also, Bernard is the producer on those. So,
right.
You know, once I give him the tracks back, he goes home. The extent of editing he'll do is he'll kind of take my mix and do solo rides. Just of where things need to come up a little bit more. And that's it. It's quite beautiful when you listen back because you feel like you're in the room.
Wow. And just like working with all these different instruments, what's your process when you go to capture one that maybe you're not super familiar with? Like,
there's like basic techniques that you would know.
Right.
You know, there's like 2 different places you would make a sax around the bell.
Okay.
And then you kind of need to listen to that instrument on the day and see what's happening in the room, and then decide, okay, where am I getting rejection? Do I need rejection? Are they balanced enough within themselves?
Interesting.
And you kind of make those calls there and then.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
But then it kind of, I don't know. It really depends, because I learned a lot from like Connor Brady as well. And Connor comes from the background of being a musician and a guitar player. And his take is like, just kind of don't ruin the chemistry of what's happening, because that's more important than how you capture a sound.
Do you think there's a personality type or a characteristic trait that makes people good at that specific job?
I think everybody has their own approach and everybody's a little bit different.
Right.
Yeah. There's people that are like more technically focused, people that are more musical. There's people that are in between. I definitely focus more on like people. I think the technical has just kind of slipped back in the background. It's not something I think about too much anymore. But I think it comes from just having worked with so many people. Like even within the complex alone, it's like, you know, like Keane Boylan is an amazing piano player and arranger, and sessions I do with him focus on a completely different thing. Our early days of me assisting Connor, it would kind of be the same. I saw this like more musical approach to things. That was actually a lot like more similar to Ashley's. And it felt very familiar. It's a little bit more chaotic.
Right. Right.
You know, but in a good way. But you almost need that one person who holds it back just a touch for it to be great. And I think we really did that on the last few records we did together, because like we did Jerry Fisher's Daniel Johnson record, and then Dana Masters and Matt Benson, and it was that exact same team. And then we remixed it all, and it was like really in-house, but it was the perfect combination of personalities. And I think it's why those records are so good.
Yeah. And how common is that? Like, it's, you know, a lot of great stuff comes out of just a randomly good confluence of people.
Yeah.
Like in a room together, making something.
I think one thing that is really important though, and I think this comes more so from running a studio and kind of being respectful of people's times and money, in the sense that if someone is coming in to work with you, is to have a room fully set up for them before they get in, so that they're not part of that setup. You know, you're just kind of getting in and you're straight into working, and you have their best interest at heart.
Right.
I think that, I don't know, it gives sessions a completely different energy.
How do you set up? What's the way to set up a room? Like,
depends on, first again, the conversation is like, what do you want to do today?
right.
You know, when we're tomorrow, what's the plan? You know, and it's like letting them walk into a room that already has a setting,
Right.
that they're free to shift and change as they need. But if they feel like just sitting down and playing straight away, there's nothing holding them back from doing it. So it's about you being on your game.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, exactly. It's that caged chaos that you're talking about. Like, come into this space and be completely free.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, to have like, if you have, you know, if you're coming into a writing session well, on a writing session, I'd always have like a key station with all the synths running through like a MIDI connection with a master controller, piano, guitar station, a drum station. And more often than not, none of it fucking gets used, you know? But it's like the few times it does, you can see just the excitement of being able to go from one thing to another and having no part of that process slow down.
Yeah.
I think that's how every writing session should be,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Personally.
No, it makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a lot of it is curation in a sense, like a curation of people or instruments or gear or spaces. And it sort of links to this later question that I had written down, which you can take or leave. It's just, you know, because curation is such a human thing in terms of having a taste meter, this abstract thing inside your head that's like going yes or no about certain things. Have you thought much about AI music or looked at it or ignored it or?
I've been ignoring it entirely.
Yeah, good.
You know, apart from latest version of Pro Tools that allows you to run splice internally with like AI stacks, so you can highlight, you know, a selection,
Right.
and it'll automatically give you stuff that's in time with your track and in key.
Okay.
Yeah, that's as far as it's gone. And even at that, yeah, that was last week. And it was like, it's great to spark ideas and like, you know, no hesitation in using it, but it's kind of creating like more and more, or the fear of it is creating more and more records that just sound identical to one another, which is something we're already in danger of doing. You know, if I think of records that really shape me, like if I like the Soft Bulletin by the Flaming Lips, such a unique sounding record, you know. After that, I guess MGMT. I don't know. It's kind of, or even like the Benjamin Hart, Mala, you know, they're all, they sound so unique.
Yeah.
Whereas there is a danger of contemporary music all fitting into this, you know, it's punchy, it's bright, it's just the same sonic samples in the same sonic space. Even if you're doing something different, it's uniform. And that's not to say like, you know, like Daft Punk, fucking amazing, right? It's not to say electronic music's shit or you shouldn't use samples.
No.
In any shape or form.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
It's no, yeah, 100%. But even that, the doing of that, the person behind that doing of the curation of like this sample, this sound, this thing, like being in a space in which there's two of you doing it at least, you know, in the moment, like even no matter what it is, like
3 is the magic number because like in production teams, I've noticed 3 people, anything that comes to vote is 2 against 1.
interesting.
So you make choices super quickly. If 2 people love something and one doesn't, you go with the, and so on. You know,
That's
so
really
it just means like when you work on your own, sometimes you tend to like, because even though I don't release music, I make a lot of music. I would make music in all my spare time, you know, between 2 and 4 in the morning. And that's just my treat to myself. I don't have any intention of putting music out, but it's just something I love doing. But I still got bogged down in choices that I know if I had John and Marie in the room with me, we would be working at a completely different pace.
Yeah.
There's no second guessing.
Yeah. It's actually something that's come up quite a lot in these conversations, if not every time, which is just the importance of maybe sharing the responsibility of an idea, you know, allows you to, like you say, it's the pace of it that might quicken up to get to a place that you're satisfied with it, rather than, you know, getting caught in that vicious cycle, which is like you making it and then you trying to analyze it alone.
We're always the harshest on ourselves, I think. At least I know I definitely am. Yeah. So knowing that there's been, you know, a team of people to take me to where I've gotten my choices. It's not just your choices, it's a collective's choices, you know?
Yeah.
So you can kind of stand a bit more confidently behind it. We all kind of, especially when you trust each other, and I think that's the key to it. I think you need to trust the people you're working with, you know, and that just comes from either respecting what they do or having known them for a long time. And again, you know, someone, if Rory gives me an opinion or John gives me an opinion and vice versa, it's brutally honest and it's constructive and it's, you know, it's an extension of their taste. So I like their taste. If both of them are telling me something's shit, well, I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll do that. Don't take that too personally.
Yeah. Because it's serving the overall goal, which is making the best thing we can, you know?
Yeah.
Would there be any, just before we wrap up, any more insights into creativity itself that maybe you've discovered along this journey that you're on. Like 3 is the magic number is such a great one, and you know, trusting the people you work with. Anything coming to mind?
Not that I haven't touched on already. I think what's interesting is like no matter what level you're working at, everyone kind of runs into the exact same issues. You know, except sometimes some are funded by a large team of people and some aren't. But like ultimately, there's a lot of similarities. I think the only thing I would say, and it feeds into a lot of things I've already said, but if you're a younger person wanting to get into it, the benefit of going somewhere like, let's say like a college like BIM or Pulse Sound Training Center, any of them, you know, I don't think it's what you'll learn by being there, but it's like being put in a room with people trying to do the same thing. It's that thing of like bouncing ideas of each other. You all kind of have the same end goal. You build your community, and they're all so heavily based around having a community. And I think the subtlety of getting better, if you're always pushing to be better, it's a lot smaller increments that just happen over doing it over and over and over and over and over.
100%.
Yeah. I think the next phase of my life is definitely having more responsibility.
Okay.
You know, rather than, I feel like quite grateful for it, but I've always worked under other companies and other people. I think you learn the skill, but you never have that overriding responsibility that you're the person that needs to deliver something. You do there on the day, but not in a bigger sense.
Yeah.
So I think that's the next step for me.